What if I told you that when your students or your own children laugh at something tragic or act like they don't care about others, they're not broken or heartless? They're actually showing you exactly where they need your help. Today, attachment expert Eli Harwood, also known as the attachment nerd, is going to flip everything you thought you knew about nurturing confident, empathetic kids on its head. She's about to share why children have the total opposite reactions than we expect them to sometimes, why the phrase "you're fine" might be doing more harm than good, and what the differences are between confidence and arrogance. Let's jump in. This is Solutions Teaching Strategies, the podcast that extends education beyond the classroom. A show that isn't just theory, but practical, try it tomorrow approaches for educators and caregivers to ensure every student finds their spark and receives the support they need to thrive. I am Olivia Wall, and I am so happy to have Eli Harwood back on the podcast today. Let me tell you a little bit about Eli if you have not already met her. Eli Harwood is known to many as the beloved attachment nerd creator. She's devoted her life and career, spanning the last 17 years, to the intricate art and science of attachment relationships. Our conversation today will focus on how attachment theory can help our children learn to communicate effectively and thrive. We'll zoom in on chapters 5 and 6 of Eli's most recent book. I have it right here. I just have to say, the cover is actual
Oh,
embroidery. You cannot make this up. The book is Raising Securely Attached Kids Using Connection-Focused Parenting to Create Confidence, Empathy, and Resilience. Eli, welcome back. It is a gift to be in conversation with you again.
thank you. I feel the same way.
I'm psyched, and I've shared with you before we jumped on to record, I have a couple selfish reasons that I needed to talk with you again and to pick your brain. We're zooming in on chapters 5 and 6. Everyone needs to have this book, though. And it's critical, I would say, for caregivers as well as educators, thinking of empathy, thinking of developing confident, not arrogant children. That's what we're going to speak
Mhm.
to today. So kick us off with some research. Who are you leaning on lately, a researcher or a nugget that grounds your work?
Yeah, so I like to get into the weeds of kind of like what's the most recent attachment research while also kind of staying in I would say the foundational research. So I always go Mary Ainsworth. Mary Ainsworth created The Strange Situation. I write about that in the book. Her work of just really understanding parental reliability,
Mhm.
how children experience parents either as a safe haven they can rely on or not, right? And so I think that piece of research of really helping me go back to, okay, what is it that we can do as caregivers, as parents, as teachers? Teachers end up playing the role of attachment
They
figure
sure do.
often for
Yeah.
kids because they're filling in the gaps of what, parents are not always able to do based on their own trauma, circumstances, etc. So what can we be doing as the adults in the lives of our kids to cultivate relationships where our these kids can rely on us and they can rely on us as support, as guides, right? They can rely on us for empathy and understanding. So that's Mary Ainsworth. And then I'd say a lot of the newer research is kind of looking at the neuroscience of some of this, which is just good for bolstering my confidence in all of it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is like sciencey,
Yes.
sciencey. There's some interesting stuff. Someone recently, and I'm not going to be able to quote the researcher. I'll find a link for you so you can put it in the notes. But um, they've been doing research on this very particular nerve in our bodies. They call it the attachment nerve.
Come on.
Um, that stroking kind of touch that we do. I used to
Yeah.
do this with my baby's head, this kind of thing. It's like there is a rhythm and a timing with which this nerve activates, and it plays a role in regulating the heart. So, that we are wired to be supported, soothed, connected to other people. And obviously, you're not doing this with, your junior high school math students,
Right.
right? So, a lot of that happens, early on in development. But what if it doesn't happen? And then what are our children, developmentally needing, and how do we meet those needs later on? That's really all very interesting to me. But I think the crux of it is human beings are relational creatures, and the research is very clear that that is wired into our biology and deeply affects our trajectory.
So then let's go to a quote that I have right from your mouth because I think this is huge for caregivers and educators to hear. I'm going to read it. Human beings are a we before a me. And I'd love for you to speak then to what does this mean for how we parent and how we nurture a community in a classroom?
Mhm. This concept is harder for those of us who have grown up in like Western civilization and ideas where we have individualistic culture. We think in terms of, separateness before we think about togetherness.
Right.
Whereas I, have worked and lived in Asian countries and countries with corporate culture. I think it's easier to understand in those contexts. It's like, well, yeah, of course, we're a we. But for me as an American, it's taken me some time to kind of go, okay, what does that mean? Well, what it means is human beings are born entirely dependent on other human beings. So a child doesn't come out of a womb with a consciousness of their self, with a separateness.
Yeah.
Their entire experience of life is about who's touching them, who isn't, who's feeding them. It's a sensory experience. It's not an identity experience. And what we know from the data is that the quality of interaction that a child receives, especially in those early years, has an impact on how their brain develops. Like literally the structure, are we going to look for thickened prefrontal cortex because a child received a lot of attunement and touch? Or are we noticing an enlarged amygdala because a child felt isolated or scared? It's at our core. We develop our sense of self in relationship to our relationships.
Yeah.
And so how we relate to our children is a integral part of how they will come to see themselves.
And you also offer this statistic that speaks directly to this. It's terrifying, yet for any new caregiver, new parent out there, for grandparents, like, listen, because by age 3, we have
Yes,
developed 80% of our
of
brain
our
mass
brain
matter.
structure.
I
Yes.
mean, so I appreciate how you're letting us actually visualize the brain development based on that nurturing or attunement that we have. Um, and then I'm going to pivot because you're talking about a 10-year-old. I have a 13-year-old in my house. I have a 17-year-old that's off in college now. It's bananas. And I've worked really hard with my husband to try to develop confident kids that are also kind and loving and empathetic. And you discern in chapter 5 so beautifully between confidence and arrogance. Can you define for us what are the differences between confidence and arrogance?
Confidence is a deep sense of our worthiness. So if I'm confident, then I believe I am worthy. And that worthiness can, translate in different levels in different arenas for us. We might be less confident with public speaking,
Right.
but, more confident with, our ability to bake a pie.
Mhm.
So obviously it's not a monolith confidence, but in general, the sense if someone has a deep sense of confidence, they believe on a core level that they are worthy of safety, of connection, of dignity, of joy, of rest, right? Of all the goodness of life. Arrogance, on the other hand, is a comparative mindset. So confidence is I feel confident in myself. I also then naturally believe other people deserve all of those things. Like truly confident people believe that everyone deserves all of those good things of life.
Yes.
Whether or not everyone has it is a different story, but we believe that everyone deserves it. Arrogance says there's a hierarchy of deserving. And so arrogance says, I deserve these things more than somebody else, right? As opposed to I do and so do they. And I think sometimes we get lost in, fear around, "What if my child," I don't want them to be arrogant. So, like, if they're really believing themselves or they're asking for something, then, like, "Oh, no, is that arrogant?" Or even in ourselves, like, "Am I being arrogant if I believe that I deserve something good?"
Yeah.
No. No, you're only being arrogant if you think someone else doesn't deserve it.
And that can connect to imposter syndrome in a way as well, right? Of like, "Whoa, this really amazing thing is coming my way, and I don't know if I'm worthy of it. Am I?"
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
so I think that's a whole other layer, of that self-questioning. And then I also think too, praise-based feedback can be really detrimental, to the self, and it's not improvement feedback.
Mhm.
So you have a formula you've crafted and created around how we can offer feedback that praises effort. Would you mind speaking to that?
Yes, and it's really not mine. This comes from this work, comes from Carol Dweck,
Yeah.
and she talks about the inverse power of praise, of how praise can actually make kids feel more paralyzed, because if I say, "You're so smart," we would consider that praise, then a child is now locked into being smart, and what if I do something that makes me not smart? Or how do I handle, if I fail, does that mean I'm not smart? So the piece of the puzzle is being able to help our children get feedback about the things they are doing that are yielding the goals and rewards that they want to experience. So instead of saying you're so smart, I say, "Oh, whoa, that was incredible. I saw how you just used your brain to like walk through the different steps there and analyze what the answer might be." Or that was so amazing how you um went back to your notes and referenced your notes to find the thing you were looking for.
Mhm.
You remembered that you had a resource you could draw upon. How incredible. How crafty.
Yeah.
Or we're speaking to what is it that you are doing? What are the steps you're taking? Because when we are learning, we are also failing.
Yes.
Anybody here have some rough roads along
Yeah.
your learning journey? That we want kids to see that being smart is about processing the information, the tools, the access. It's not about a goal that you achieve or an answer that you get right. It's
Yeah.
about how you engage the learning process. And that's just so much more rewarding for all of us,
Yeah.
to be able to be like, oh, I know how to do this and we can replicate it. Right. So I can't always replicate being smart.
I had this crazy experience last week of being able working with teachers across the day, and they had one particular student, 4 different times, 4 different classes, and I saw how he interacted with 4 different adults
Whoa.
based on the expectations they had for him. And in one of them, I actually approached him and I said, "Why do you come to school?" And he said, "Because I'm forced to." And I responded in a way I think it surprised him. I said, "Well, what would you do if you didn't have to come to school?" He looked at me thinking I was going to convince him that he had to come to school every day. And he said, "Well, I would work, as a carpenter like my dad."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Okay, so this is what you need to know. In order to become an expert carpenter like your dad, you have to have these crazy good math skills and literacy skills to read and write the contracts, and so you can have a sustaining business." And he kind of looked at me and sat back and thought, oh, the next day, he pretended to not see me the rest of the day. The next day, I saw him in the hall, and he kind of nodded at me, and I thought, when we see kids and the idea of praise, sometimes it actually sets the bar low, I think, and so it's how can we acknowledge kids' effort and continue to have those expectations rise for them? I don't know what you think about that.
Well, what I think that you did is the most beautiful, magical thing of all, which is you reached him, right? So one of my favorite phrases that I tell myself is reach before you teach.
I also think that trying to force empathy can be really dangerous and ineffective,
You
so
you
speak to that.
can't.
Okay,
Okay,
why?
so
Why?
empathy cannot be taught through, um, linear lessons. It is an experiential lesson, period. So if you want to help increase empathy in anyone in your life, you give them empathy. You empathize with them. And this is challenging,
Mhm.
especially I think in a world that feels so polarized and where like, I don't know, maybe this is dramatic, but I feel like hate has been popularized lately. Like it's
Yeah.
popular to like not give a crap about people or certain people. Um, but at the end of the day, you're never going to reach someone by telling them you're not a good enough person because you don't care about other people.
Yeah.
You reach them by having empathy for what it is that's going on with them. And uh, let me give you an example. So let's say you're in a classroom and you're teaching about something that involves um, a lot of complex tragedy.
Mhm.
And in the middle of that process, a bunch of kids burst out into laughter. Ooh, that's a trigger. That could be such a trigger because
Yep.
it's like,
It's
this is
baffling.
inappropriate.
Yeah.
Um, but actually, a lot of times, nervous laughter is the body's first response to horror and terror. So if I don't know how to hold horror and terror in my nervous system because no one has responded to my feelings of vulnerability and distress, then when someone else is telling me a big story, my body is going to try to bring levity to the moment
That's so interesting.
because I'm trying to regulate. So it's actually a regulation response generally. Could someone be mocking? Of course, that could be there. Maybe they've been taught to do that. But again, why? Why is that being there? What is being there? It's a lack of ability to tolerate and feel those painful feelings that come up when we hear about awful things.
Yeah.
So as a teacher in that moment, the knee-jerk reaction is like, absolutely not. This is not funny. We do not laugh about this level of terror, horror, whatever. But what you've actually done just then is the opposite of empathy. So what's the human thing? So I think the most powerful thing to do in that moment is to pause and go, this is kind of awkward. This is sort of uncomfortable. I want you all to recognize, I want us all to notice every time we laugh, because when we're laughing, it's a sign that we were feeling uncomfortable about the level of pain and terror in this story. And that makes sense because none of us have lived through this story, or maybe we know someone who has, but we don't wanna know that because it's
Yeah.
disturbing,
Yeah.
And so you're modeling that you respond to people's feeling states while holding on to their dignity. Um, a and man, this is hard. When you see bullying in the world, oh, the instinct is absolutely not in front of me, and it is not that we become permissive and we look the other way. It's we have to engage with an understanding of why does anybody bully anybody? Because somewhere they learn that the most important way to survive is to be on top in the pecking order.
Yeah.
And they've either themselves been at the bottom or they've witnessed other people being at the bottom and they instinctively don't want that. And so, being able to pull a kid aside and say, hey, I'm not sure where you learned it. I'm sure you learned it because I know that's not innately who you are.
Right.
What I just saw happening was bullying. I want to explain to you what I saw, but I want to understand your why. What was happening for you, kid? Were you wanting so and so to think you were cool? Because I want people to think I'm cool and I'm ancient. You know, the, finding reach before you teach.
Yeah.
And be wary of preaching. Preaching is when we start just running our mouth without any recognition of the voice or the need behind the bad behavior behind the thing.
Yeah. That is extraordinarily helpful. I'm thinking of middle school teachers out there that are trying to navigate reading content with kids that they may find scary or out of the ordinary, or even with characters that they have never met or seen or experienced knowing. And so the way you just framed that would be tremendously helpful. It is for me as a coach, as well as for the educators I'm working with and for caregivers, because sometimes you feel like you've done something wrong if your
Yes.
child reacts like with laughter to, but that your
Yes.
explanation was just so helpful for me.
I'm so glad. And the other ideal thing would be setting up expectations before you read something. Hey, we're going to read this book and this story, and I'm going to be real with you. It's uncomfortable for me to read. And you may experience a range of different reactions, emotional reactions in yourself. You might feel numb and checked out while you're reading. I want you to be curious about that.
Yeah.
You might feel angry and, you know, feel the burn and the fire of injustice. You might feel sad. You might feel hopeless. You might feel awkward. And in fact, at some of the most disturbing moments in the story, you might find yourself automatically laughing. These are all human reactions to painful stories.
Mhm.
That we all have different ways of reacting to pain, and we all react differently to pain at different times in our lives. So
Yeah.
let's pay attention, and here, I'm gonna have you keep a reaction journal.
Come on, that's such a good idea.
Yep, and so we're noticing, and then as a teacher, you're able to give empathy to that journal. When the kid's like, "Ha ha, this is a joke. This is dumb." You're like,
Tell me more.
Tell me more. Tell me more about what that is and,
Yeah.
where that comes from." And, um, I think I always think, how do I normalize for a child, whether they're 14 or they're 2, this feeling is in your body for a reason, and you can make a choice about what you're gonna do in response to it, right? So, I think that tension is making sure that you are seeing the feeling from a place of dignity. Even if it's a kid, I mean, I get it. There are kids where it's like, it's really hard to connect. Well,
Mhm.
why?
Yeah.
Why is it really hard to connect? So seeing kids as who are cold or mocking or bullying or disconnected as being tool deficient, not heart deficient, not care deficient. They're tool deficient. The care is in there. They're born with it. We just have to figure out how to give them the tools they need in order to show us those parts of themselves. But those parts are there.
But there are so many kids in our schools that are showing up without the tools, whether it be because it's not coming from home, I don't know. And so there is this multitude that now teachers are having to fill. And when I shifted into chapter 6, I'm an over highlighter. It's a really bad habit. And so I started to only highlight lines that I'm like, okay, I could hear your voice just rings so loud and true through your writing. I feel like I'm sitting and talking with you. It's just
I
beautiful.
love that.
And I went to that idea of structure
Mhm.
because now thinking too of my older son in college and younger
Mhm,
son,
mhm.
it's that not over, what is it? The idea of suffocation versus scaffolding. And I was speaking with someone on Friday and she said, "Do you use, what is it, 360 with your son to know where he is?" I was like, "No. What do you mean?" And it didn't even occur to me to do that. We have a video call once a week. Um, and she said, "Oh, well, I know where my child is," and I'm not being judgmental right now, you do
No,
you.
no, 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 no.
But
Two different choices.
yeah, and in my mind, it was once he flew from our house to go, I have to trust that no matter what situation he's in, if it's really bad, he'll reach out if he needs help. Otherwise, he's got it. And I had to, as a caregiver, break free
Yes.
of knowing. I don't want to know where he is
No.
at every moment.
No. No. That won't work well because because his brain in his, adolescence as a 17-year-old college student, his brain is activating him to take necessary risks that allow him to develop what he needs to develop. Your brain is not going to be able to process that information in any way other than a threat.
Right.
And so you're gonna go into threat mode, more regularly. I think this is such an important piece of information too, is like, okay, so how do we give kids the structure they need and then release them and us of that structure when they're ready? And ready doesn't mean they are as mature as we are. They're not going to be. Ready means that they have enough trust in you and in themselves to make the mistakes they need to make and reach out for the help they're gonna need when they make.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think how when you're thinking about teachers right now, in terms of, like, the structure piece, and you have these kids coming in who are maybe more relationally, tool deficient
Yeah.
than previous generations. I think there's a lot of stuff. We're still teaching kids that went through the pandemic,
We
who
sure are.
missed out on a lot of socialization that they needed. Um, what are you feeling like the need is in terms of talking about the structure piece? Are teachers over structuring? Are they under structuring? What do you think the issue is there?
I would say it's actually a huge lack of just engagement. And so planning for chunks of time, if we're talking middle and high school, if it's a 40-minute period, how much time can we offer kids that we trust that they will engage as learners without starting to fling papers or drop pencils or you get up and use the bathroom, that type of piece. And so it's that trust of, I know you've got this,
Mm.
and so that's what I would say. It's the idea of structure of planning for students to actually do work and engage with it.
Kids are going to pick up on our presence as well as our expectations. So I
Yeah.
think remembering that when you come into the classroom, like, trust yourself that you know that what you are offering is good for these kids,
Yeah.
and um bring to them a clear understanding of what is expected and what will happen if it's not happening. And I don't mean that like a threatening punitive way, but like,
Right.
hey, this is what it looks like. This is how you get a passing grade in my class. This is how you get a B. This is how you get an A. This is how you leave this classroom with a sharper mind and more tools for life.
Yeah.
You, child, are in charge of that. I am not in charge of that. I'm going to set the table. You have to pick up your fork and eat it.
Yes.
And I'm going to make you some delicious food and some nutritious food that is going to help you grow. But at the end of the day, you don't want to pick up that fork. You don't want to eat. I can't force you to. And then you really have to work on not forcing that, allowing the structure to be the thing, allowing that kid to keep failing, allowing them to fail your class. I do think there's a fear of letting kids fail.
I agree.
I and I'm not as afraid of a kid failing in high school as I am them failing once they've launched out of into the world. Like,
Yeah.
I'd much rather a kid fail while they're still in a system that can help them figure out what they need to do in order to succeed. Um, it's not about, well, you deserve that. It's like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. What
Yeah.
what do we need to help you get what you need?
It's a long game. It really
Yeah.
is. But
Mhm.
have you thought through how our kids could also have these conversations in kind, loving ways?
I love this. Yes. My son just joined peer mentors. I don't know, like, there's lots of different groups that, do stuff like that. But I love that, like making sure there are programs within our educational system that are helping kids help kids and have those crucial conversations. Um, One of my favorite kind of hacks in relationships is what I would call one down curiosity. One of my old colleagues, Katie Greenleaf, if she's listening, hi, Katie, taught me this a long time ago, and the idea is this: when you are asking someone to do something differently, to make a change, whether that's for themselves or for the classroom or for you, start by making sort of a suggestion that's actually below what it is you kind of think you know already. So let's say a kid is acting out a lot and they're kind of clowning around and they're they're flicking the paper at other kids and, you pull them aside and you say, "Hey, okay, I need your help with something. I sense you are either bored, distracted, disinterested, or just really don't like this class. I'm not sure what it is. But there's something going on with you that I think is making it hard for you to follow the expectations I've set. And maybe it's my expectations. Are they too high? I just don't think that's the case. My instinct is you've got a lot of brain going on in that noggin of yours. Um, am I wrong? What is going on? And by doing that, you might learn that a kid doesn't think they're smart. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not smart. And you're like, wait, 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 what? Oh my gosh. I I just strongly disagree. Can we debate this for a minute? I'd like to debate you about whether or not you're smart. Let me show you some things I can see that are smart. I notice that you have incredible fashion sense. You are very keen at picking up on what is cool right now. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. I have watched how quickly and how wittily you come up with funny things to say. They aren't always the kindness. We need to work on that. But man, they're
But
witty. They are witty.
yeah.
And you know what wit is? Wit is brains. Wit is smart. And so now you're creating a connection with a kid that is about bolstering their sense of self.
Yeah.
And you're being curious as opposed to conclusive,
Hmm.
right? What is this?
Yeah.
And you could even start that whole conversation out with just, hey, okay, this is what I know, this is what I don't know. What I know is that, you know, you're flinging papers, you're not really listening, you're doing all this stuff. What I don't know is that because you hate this class?
Mhm.
Is that because you have a hard time paying attention? Is that because things are going on in your life that are just too big to give a
Yeah.
care about algebra? Like, what is the thing going on, kid?
Yeah.
And they might be like, nothing, nothing's going on. And you'd be like, okay, well, that's good. I
Mhm.
was worried it was something big. I'm so
Yeah.
glad there's nothing. Um, help me solve this problem. How do I get Jake to be engaged enough that his brain leaves my classroom full of confidence in himself, knowing how smart he is, and understanding the quadratic equation so that he can go and, blah, blah, blah. How do I do this? So that one down curiosity, you can teach that to kids too. Like, anytime you're worried about someone or you need to confront something, start with curiosity. Ask them a question.
I want to move to a lightning round.
Great.
And so I'm going to throw some questions at you. Give me your gut reactions.
Okay.
What's the biggest parenting myth that you have to confront often?
That it's your job to shape who your child is. That the role of the parent is controlling the outcome of the child.
That's a good one. What's one phrase that caregivers should stop saying immediately?
You're fine.
So good. It's true. Oh my gosh. What's the most powerful question caregivers should ask themselves daily?
What do I need to be regulated enough to connect with my child today?
Oh, what's a structure that we should implement right away in our home?
Rituals of connection. My favorite, easiest structure that you can implement as a parent is enthusiastic greeting. My kids know without a doubt that when they see me, when they're coming off the school bus, when they're waking up in the morning, that my eyes are gonna light up, my face is gonna light up, my arms are gonna be wide open. And they can have whatever reaction they want to that. They may not be interested in that. And if they come in, sad and soggy, I'm not gonna go, "Hey," I'm gonna attune to them, but the message is, "I am so glad to see you."
Yeah.
That structure more than maybe any other structure you create as a parent is making sure your kids know that they bring light into your heart when they come into the room.
Eli, I remember seeing a reel that you posted a long time ago around how our animals greet us, specifically dogs, though. Like they've never seen you,
Yes.
even if it's 10 minutes after you've been out of the house. And that after hearing that, I try my darndest, no matter where I am in the house, to run like a maniac when I hear the Ring doorbell. to be there and then attune, but just to be present and to show that same love, um, just unconditional. Like, I will be there for you however and whenever I can.
Yes.
Um, I have also followed your website, the Nerd Herd, all of the things.
Oh,
Is it best for us if we want to purchase your books or just become part of your community? Is your website the best way to reach out?
yes, attachmentnerd.com. And I'm launching a new program called the Secure Parent Program. And it's a lifetime access program so that people can also join in my Q&As and the support groups that we do and all
So
of that kind
good.
of stuff. But it's a 6-week program to help parents really cultivate a secure relational mindset. Like, what are the things that matter? What are the things that go into the F it bucket?
Yeah.
How do I cultivate this type of relationship? Because whether you're teaching or you're parenting, your primary mission, the most important lesson that you are teaching a child is whether or not you're going to show up for them. And if we can teach all kids that there are grown-ups in the world that they can rely on, whew, we have a very different world.
We sure do. We sure do. Uh, I will end on that note, and I cannot say thank you enough, for
Mhm.
taking the time. Your schedule is so busy and so full, so I think this conversation will not only help caregivers, I think the teachers I know that I am working with, it will just benefit the children in those classrooms tremendously, so thank you, Eli.
I love that. I love that, love that, love that, and love everything you're doing. And you have such dog energy, by the way. You don't need to work at it. Like, it's just it's so clear that you love people and love to connect with them, and it's beautiful.
That's a high compliment from you. Take care, friend. Solutions Teaching Strategies is created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Thank you to my older son, Benjamin, who created the music playing in the background. You can follow and listen to Solutions wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe to never miss an episode and watch on YouTube. Thank you to my guest, Eli Harwood, for sharing how we can all nurture securely attached kids. Remember, as Eli said, human beings are a we before a me. Your child's brain is literally being shaped by how you connect with them. So here's my invitation. Tomorrow morning, greet your kid like a dog greets you. Eyes lit up, arms wide open, pure enthusiasm. Just try it once and see what happens. Email me at solutionspodcast@gmail.com to share your stories. If this episode helped you see your child's or student's behavior in a new light, please share it with another caregiver or teacher who needs to hear it. And don't forget to grab Eli's book, Raising Securely Attached Kids. The link's in the show notes. Make sure to tune in every Monday for the best research-backed coaching and teaching strategies you can apply right away to better the lives of the children in your care. And stay tuned for my bonus episodes every Friday, where I'll reflect and share connections to what I learned from the guests that week. Until next time, remember, reach before you teach.